Man, oh man, I'm so tired from the daily stresses of being a medieval lord in Europe. Where can a fellow get something to eat? A quick bite, maybe? Manchet bread. Let's get to the kitchen, guys. It's time for some serious cooking. Now, before you even start cooking, you're going to need to wash your hands. I have already washed my hands, but if you don't wash your hands, I won't hesitate to cry. For the ingredients, you'll need about 4.5 cups of bread flour, 2.5 tablespoons of rice flour, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, about 1.5, maybe a little less than 1.5 tablespoons of yeast, 6 tablespoons of warm water. I don't have it yet, as you can see, but I'm going to get there soon. A little less than half a cup of ginger ale, and 2 tablespoons of honey. Step in the recipe is to combine all of the flours and the salt in a large bowl. This is the large bowl. So let me get my flour, 4.5 cups of it, but I'm just going to put it in here for dramatic effect. Get the rice flour and the salt. 3, 2, 1. Wow, it did it! Thanks, God. Love you. Okay, so now we need to mix this stuff. So I'm gonna go get a spoon and I'm gonna mix it. Here we are. The mixture is mixed. So now the recipe calls for adding all of the liquid components, the warm water, the ginger ale, and the honey into a bowl, and then taking the yeast and dissolving it into that bowl. So I am going to do that real quick. You guys just sit tight. The next step in the recipe is to combine the liquid mixture to the solid mixture. So we're going to do that right here, right now. The liquid mixture. And I'm going to put this down for a moment. So I can go over it. Flour your surface like so, or maybe not like so. I don't know if this is the correct way to flour a surface, but yeah. Next, we're going to take the mixture itself that I have mixed. It looks kind of like that right now. All right, I'm done with the dough. You want it at about this consistency where it's not sticky to the touch and it's not crumbling apart on you. It can stay together, it can hold its shape a little bit. Now that the dough is done, we will leave it in a lightly oiled bowl for 2 hours. This is the bread at 10:30, about 2 minutes after I put it in the lightly oiled bowl. So we're going to take this big man and we're going to have it into 8 pieces. So that means we're going to have it 3 separate times. And then we're going to put it onto a baking sheet with preferably baking parchment. But if you don't have it, like I don't, you're just going to use butter or Spam to make sure the bread doesn't stick to the sheet. Alright, so we have our baking sheet. And I made a mistake in the last recording. It's actually ham, not Spam. Do not use Spam as a non-stick agent. It would be disastrous. Now that we've rounded the dough pieces into balls, the recipe calls for letting them sit for 45 minutes covered with a sheet of baking parchment. And since I don't have any baking parchment, I'm just going to pop these bad boys in the oven as soon as possible. So what you're going to want to do is preheat the oven to 392 degrees Fahrenheit. Before we actually put the rolls into the oven, we're going to slash them with a sharp knife and sprinkle them with flour. So I'm going to do that real quick. Just got done with slicing and flouring all of these rounds. The temperature is currently at 380 degrees, 385, so we are going to be at the 390 mark very shortly. So just gonna pop these in. Oh, there it is. Alright. Hold on a sec. Okay, so the rolls are in the oven now. As you can see, they look pretty good. We are going to let those sit in there for 20 minutes, starting now. Okay, now that's done, so I'm going to take these out of the oven now. Let's see. Not really. Okay, that's good enough. So, I recommend you use oven mitts. I'm going to use 2 because I'm a wimp, but you do you. Okay, these are looking fine. So now we're going to try to see if we can determine if they're all fine as they should be. They're kind of hard, so I guess so. Oh, the bread is done. And I have a piece with me here. If I were to describe the smell, it smells like something I wouldn't want to find on my floor. Meaning, the cat probably packed it up or something. It doesn't smell good at all. It doesn't smell like how bread should smell. But when I eat it, I can definitely tell it's bread. But I just feel like you could use some improvements. So I'm going to go and ask my cat, hey Toby, what do you think of this bread? Toby, here, take it. I don't know if she doesn't even want it or something. Here, Toby. Okay, so she sniffed it and she doesn't even want it, which shows me that this bread has been essentially a failure. Hey guys, it's medieval bread time. This particular bread is Manchet bread. It's made in medieval Europe. It's commonly served at royal gatherings to high-ranking citizens such as lords, kings, and their respective families. It's considered to be a top bread because of the flour quality. Manchet bread had a flour that was both finer and wider than other breads at the time, making it more valuable to be consumed. This was due to grinding methods in this era that dictated how fine the flour would be. Manchet bread was made into small rolls with the purpose of fitting into a gloved hand. So about this big you would want it, maybe a little bit smaller so it can fit more conveniently. Manchet bread would be made with flour, which would be cultivated and milled in Europe. It'd be made with rice flour, which was grown very sparingly. Rice was grown sparingly, and it was imported as it was highly valued as a crop. You would have salt, which was obtained by trade. Yeast was cultivated and traded in order to be obtained. You would have water, which would be collected from wells and whatnot. Beer, you would have to make the beer, and for honey, it would be collected from local beekeeping areas. Hey guys, I'm from 14th century India. I just got back from a nice dinner. I'm about to go to my house to make some dessert. I want something that's versatile and cheap. What do you think I'm gonna make? Kheer, obviously. I mean, there are only 4 or 5 ingredients that we need, and they're super cheap. We've got milk, which is used in a whole lot of other Indian dishes. We've got rice, we've got sugar, and then we've got cinnamon or cardamom or any other spice you choose. Let's go and make it, shall we? Come on, let's go. Moving on to Kheer, you will need 4.5 cups of whole milk, a 1/4 cup of uncooked rice, 7 tablespoons of sugar, and 4 or 5 cardamom pods. First thing we'll be doing to make kheer is adding a 1/4 cup of rice, uncooked, into boiling water, and we're going to leave it in there while stirring it, obviously, for 10 to 12 minutes. But the goal is to have it overcooked, so overcooked that it's soft and mushy and all that jazz. So I will be back to you once the water is properly boiling. As you can see, it's not right now, so give it a few minutes, it'll be boiling. The water is boiling now, which means it's time to add the rice. Rice added. Now we'll just let that sit for 10 to 12 minutes while stirring it frequently so it doesn't stick to the bottom. Now that the rice are adequately cooked, they're kind of soft, overcooked actually, we are going to strain them and then transfer them to a bowl. And after we transfer them to a bowl, we are going to mush them up with a fork until they resemble oatmeal, according to the recipe. Now, personally, I think that's pretty gross, so I'm just going to skip right to the oatmeal part. After we've made our rice into an oatmeal-like substance, we're going to add 4.5 cups of milk to this pan and start simmering it. While the milk is simmering, we're going to add 4 or 5 cardamom pods to it. We're just going to leave that in there throughout the entirety of the recipe. The milk has been simmering for a little bit. Well, actually, it's been heating. It's not quite gotten to the simmering point. I'm going to add the 7 tablespoons of sugar and the rice oatmeal stuff. Now the sugar and the rice are in the mixture. So now we just gotta stir this every once in a while and wait for about 2 hours. And the milk will, I guess, reduce itself, and that will be kheer. So I've been stirring the kheer for about 2 hours now, and when you stir it, you should see this brown stuff on the bottom of the steam. There's this brown stuff at the bottom, and that indicates that your kheer is probably done. So I'm going to start putting it into serving bowls, and then we'll have the final results from there. This is the kheer fully done. Thank goodness, that took a while. So I've already tried some of the kheer, and I liked it. It kind of tastes like Frosted Cheerios. We're going to go back in time to ancient India during the existence of Mesopotamia. Now, kheer was first written in the 14th century in the Ayurveda. It is a dish commonly seen in cultural and religious festivals across India. It's in meals, and it's also served as simple desserts. It's made with 4 main ingredients: milk, rice, sugar, and cardamom or cinnamon or whatever kind of spice you want to put in there. But the milk would be made from cows. That was a local thing. The rice would be grown in India, and it would also be traded. You would have sugar, which would be cultivated in India, and cardamom, which was also cultivated in India. So you basically had all 4 of the main ingredients right there, so you didn't have to work too hard to get this recipe on the stove. Now, obviously, we don't have, for example, kheer has to be reduced for about 2 hours. And in 14th century India, there would have to be a fire going for at least 2 hours. It would have to be maintained, and the kheer would have to constantly be checked on to make sure it wouldn't burn or not cook. So that was something that always had to be kept in mind. There are also many other differences, like in how foods are obtained. I mean, in 14th century India, you couldn't just go to a Walmart and buy your rice and milk. You'd have to actually gather it and obtain it. The historian, I'm here to talk about the history of Manchet bread and Kheer. Manchet bread was a staple of medieval Europe. My neighbors are outside. They're gonna crucify me. They are. Anyway, the area that we will be focusing on. Right now we're outside. We're going to see if this bread has any attractiveness to birds. I personally don't think it will. They're probably just going to see it and not want anything to do with it. So I'm going to put this phone here real quick. There's a car coming down the street. I want to see if it's going to run it over. You see the bread out in the street? Oh! Did that actually happen? You on the street. Poor piece of bread. We're gonna need 7 tablespoons of sugar. I think it matters if it's white. I mean, the recipe didn't specify, but whatever. Actually, no, not whatever. It's,